I'm Alex Samuels, political reporter with the Texas Tribune. I am joined today by three of the newest members of the Texas Senate, Drew Springer, Roland Gutierrez, and Cesar Blanco. Springer represents Senate District 30 in Wichita Falls. Previously, he represented House District 68 since 2013. Springer was just named to the Senate committees on administration, higher education, local government, nominations, and he will serve as vice chair on the Senate Committee on Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Up next, we have Senator Gutierrez, who represents Senate District 19 in San Antonio. Previously, he represented House District 119. Gutierrez will sit on the local government, nominations, veteran affairs and border security, and water, agriculture, and rural affairs committees. Welcome, Senator. And last but not least, we have Senator Blanco of El Paso, who represents Senate District 29. Previously, he represented House District 76 since 2015. Blanco will sit on the Health and Human Services Committees, Higher Education, Transportation, and Veteran Affairs and Border Securities Committees. And with that, let's get started. I want to ask all of you why you decided to make the jump from the Texas House to the Texas Senate. Was this something you guys always wanted to do, or did some decision come along the way that this was the best move for you guys? Senator Gutierrez, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no, well, clearly it seems like the impossible journey. You know, we've been doing this now for 4 years. When the special election came about in 2018, started really running in 2017, you started kind of seeing the writing of the wall and started visiting the community. So it's been really wonderful to be able to get out in this very vast district of 17 counties, from San Antonio all the way to Brewster County, all the way to Reeves County on the northwestern side. Wonderful people, lots of opportunities. And so I think that running for the Senate was something that I didn't expect then, but over the last 3.5 years now, certainly something that we've been working towards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And next, Senator Blanco, if you want to take this question next.
Sure, Alex, thank you. I decided to run because I think what we've heard from the community is that they need a fighter. They need someone in El Paso and West Texas who are too often forgotten and marginalized. Our area has been ground zero for the immigration debate. Being a border town, El Paso is often portrayed as a dangerous place instead of the vibrant and safe city that we are. And that's according to the FBI. It's where the federal government decided to house children who were ripped away from their families. Our community was a target of a mass murder and domestic terrorists simply because of who we are. We're a product of a bicultural, Latino-dominant immigrant community. When there was a vacancy in the Senate seat, I knew that El Paso and West Texas needed an advocate with a track record of delivering for our community. And I think now more than ever, our community is in a lot of need, especially because of COVID running rampant. We need a lot of help and resources. So we need a lot of work and a lot of advocacy for this region, and decided to jump in to do that.
And last but not least, Senator Springer.
No, thank you. And for me, it was an easy transition. I've represented 22 counties in the House, the most of anybody. And going to 14 counties, it was an easy transition, working with multiple county judges, commissioners, mayors. And then the benefit for me with SD 30, is, I was raised, educated, and work in this district really my whole life. And so the understanding of the needs of a fast-growing suburban district, along with still having a portion of rural areas of the state, knowing that each of them have their own unique needs, but they need somebody who is willing to go down there and fight for them, make sure that their voices are heard, that their conservative values continue to be pressed forward. And for me, I look forward to continuing to do that and representing each and every one of them.
Got it. My next question I want to direct first to the Democrats on the panel, so to Senators Blanco and Gutierrez. What do you think you guys can get done in the Senate as members of the minority party, especially since the threshold to bring bills to the floor was just lowered from 3/5 to 5/9? Senator Blanco, do you want to start with that question?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that can get done. Even though Democrats are a minority, I think the body, especially in the Senate, is a bipartisan body. And, I think through our committee assignments and through the work and the trust that we have amongst one another, I think Democrats are able to produce for our communities. I've got that kind of experience in the House, being able to work across the aisle with building relationships. You can deliver for your community. And that's something that's unique and very different from the federal level, where everything is dictated by party. In the Texas Senate, as well as in the Texas House, you can get things done for your community. I think that's so important. So I'm excited to get to work, even though Democrats are in the minority. We've got great members on both sides of the aisle that understand that delivering for your community is why we're here. And then that's going to be the focus.
Senator Gutierrez, I'll go back to you on that question.
So, the Senate deliberates different than the House. When you're in the House, you've got five guys from both sides go in a back room and come up with the rules. It took us all day long to caucus as a whole, caucus together. And so that was a welcome change, right? To be part of the process in a different way. And I don't mean from a party perspective, but all of us being engaged in that. And then the second thing is that I think that this session is going to be different because we have so many issues that are wholly around COVID-19, fixing the economy, making sure that we thrive in Texas. And so it's my hope that we see, I don't want to say less partisanship. I just think that we can come up with solutions that make sense for both sides, for working class families. I know that Drew wants that. I know that Cesar wants that. I think that we all want to be able to work together towards positive solutions rather than kind of living in that morass of partisanship.
Mm-hmm. And Senator Springer, I know that you voted in favor of the 5/9 rule. What bills do you think are going to pass at 18 votes that maybe would have a harder time passing in the Senate at 19? Is there really a difference that you see in some of these more contentious bills that'll pass through the Texas Senate?
I think it's going to be like last session when it was 19 and 19 there. They had basically a score of bills that passed on party lines. But the other 1,000+ bills that passed through the Texas Senate last session, had bipartisan support and a mixture because, roads and education don't necessarily care from those standpoints. But there are, the Texas voters have spoken and, for over a decade have elected Republicans statewide. And they don't want to see, just a handful of people stop some of the priorities that we want to work on. Again, those are probably few and far between, but the Republican Party priorities this session will probably be those that probably do become along party lines. But that's, based on the fact that, we've got all statewide and that's what the voters want to see.
Mm-hmm. And I want to ask this a question, just stepping back for all of you. Did you guys anticipate, everything with COVID and a budget shortfall and everything else when you signed up or you decided to run for a seat in the Texas Senate? And if not, how does that affect your plans now as senators? Senator Blanco, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think all of us have an idea of why we're running and the things that we want to accomplish. But clearly, this pandemic has really affected not only the globe, but Texas in particular that we focus on. And I think for this session, COVID relief and recovery is going to be the top priority. I think thousands of Texans are out of work and facing food insecurity. Businesses are struggling to stay open, and all the health and economic disparities in our community have only been worsened by COVID-19. So I think the focus in terms of scope is really narrow. I think we need to focus on COVID recovery and relief. Obviously, there are other things like public education and redistricting, things that we're going to focus on as well. But, you go into the session with an idea of what you want to accomplish, but many times the environment dictates that, and we're in that scenario right now.
Mm-hmm. And Senator Springer, I'll go to you next.
And I was probably the unique one that jumped into the middle of the race during the middle of the pandemic. And so, I knew that was going to be a big part of it. But, our small businesses have suffered through this shutdown. And, to touch on Cesar, I think we've got to find a way of helping those small businesses back. We'll know we'll have a successful session when they're growing and when they're hiring people, and we've got to be there to help them out. It's why during the middle of the campaign, I said we need to relook at the executive powers from 1975. The three of us on this call, our other peers in the Senate and the 150 in the House, can make sure we're representing our district and having those voices heard. It's not a one size fits all state. I would never try to guess what El Paso needs, and I know Roland wouldn't, and Cesar wouldn't try to guess what Munster, Texas needs. I think we're going to address those, but and that will be a big part of it. And I think a successful session will be when we do the right things and we start to see the economy growing in Texas.
And the line with you, Senator Gutierrez.
Yeah, I think absolutely. For me, the most important thing is that we focus on the health, the safety of our constituents, the economic vitality of our state. Look, I filed a bill to legalize cannabis across the state of Texas, not because I want everybody to smoke out or smoke up. I just want everybody to be able to raise revenue. We can generate $3 billion in tax revenue. Colorado's raising 300 million, not to mention about 200 million in Denver alone, just on transportation district money. And so we have to start talking about solutions that make sense. 36 states have legalized cannabis. Oklahoma, the most liberal medical cannabis bill in the nation. And so, again, it's not that I want everybody to go out and smoke marijuana. It's the fact that we need to get with the program like 36 other states have done. So does that help us in COVID? I think absolutely it does. We've lost several $billion in this pandemic. We need to figure out how to help small businesses, mom and pops. We need to be able to help the folks at home that are unemployed, that have lost their jobs. The restaurant industry has been killed. And so we need to figure out new revenue streams.
Mm-hmm. And going back to just COVID, I know the pandemic has changed a lot in the Capitol this session, particularly the rules that the upper chamber adopted last week. I want to ask all of you, are you guys comfortable with the COVID precautions in the Senate? And do you think people who want to testify are adequately protected? Senator Gutierrez, I'll go back to you.
Yeah, I think that, like I said earlier, we had a pretty robust, I don't call it a debate, just kind of a meeting on COVID-19 rules. And I think all of us came up together with similar solutions and similar protections. We also have to look at some of the safety issues beyond COVID that are happening in the Capitol right now and why it's closed today, for instance, and tomorrow. And so testing is absolutely a part of that security piece. And it's my hope that we start looking at not just COVID, but the other issues that we're facing in our country as to how to keep us safe. Let's be clear. We have to have continuity of government. In order to do that, we need members and staff that are not going to be in peril of getting sick. And so we have to take those precautions, figure out what those precautions are. I think that we've done a great job in the Senate. It's my hope that the House confirms some of the things that we've already seen. I understand that they have different rules, but I think that over time they'll probably figure it out themselves.
Love it. Senator Springer, I'll go to you.
No, I mean, when we have a job to do, as Roland said, the continuity of government, making sure things go. One of the things that's an advantage of testing, whether you're on the left or the right, is, we do have such that fine line of who has the votes to get things done in the Senate. It would be really easy if we didn't do testing for somebody to walk into our office and then go back and tell administration or the press or somebody, I had COVID and I was in Senator Springer's office and he needs to quarantine and not be able to go to the floor. We've seen the actions across the country where people are trying to halt government. And so I don't put that past anybody. And so I think that's a safety precaution to make sure that we get the people's work done inside of 140 days. That's what we all signed up for. We didn't sign up for this to necessarily be special session after special session because we're constantly being exposed to COVID and we have to take breaks before we can get everybody back on the floor to be able to vote.
Last but not least, Senator Blanco.
Yeah, I totally agree with Roland and Drew. Safety is at the top of all of our minds. All the members of the Senate. It's changed how, as you all saw, how opening day looked. I didn't have any family with me just to be safe. we tamped down the pageantry around the beginning of session. It's nothing compared to what our families, students, and teachers on the frontline workers are going through. And yes, we did pass our rules that require senators to have a negative test before we enter the Senate chamber or committee room. And I think it's the responsible thing to do. We're not immune here at the Capitol. Just look at what happened in the House last week, where a member tested positive and other members are in quarantine for 10 days. So everyone has to be vigilant and maintain, the proper safety protocols until we can all get vaccinated. And there was a report about the interim medical director for Austin Public Health, Mark Escott, inquiring with Seton Hospital if they'd be willing to vaccinate lawmakers and key staff if they had availability. I have not received the vaccine right now. I don't meet the criteria for the groups eligible for the vaccine. Here in El Paso, there are over 100,000 people waiting for the vaccine. I've got concerns about jumping in front of the line, quite frankly. So we're going to adjust. We will be able to do the work of the people in a manner in which the public will be able to participate while keeping everyone safe.
Not bad. There are a few audience questions related to COVID that I wanted to weave in between here. So Erica asks, how can the Senate help industries like travel and tourism recover and contribute tax revenues? Senator Springer, I'll start with you.
We've got I've been more for opening things up, let individuals make more of those decisions for themselves. That's if I choose to go to a restaurant, I've had COVID. I've got the antibodies. If I still try to be safe, I still be respectful when they ask me to wear a mask, I wear a mask. But allowing businesses to be open from that standpoint, to let individuals make that choice to go. And then we've got to look at what we can do from an incentive standpoint to those industries we have shut down as government. Not by their choices, but our choices. And what can we do? And that's the restaurant, the travel industries. As a former, chairman of agriculture, I know the Texas wine industry was extremely hurt during this when 95% of the wines they sell are at the wineries, and we shut them down. And so we need to look at things that helps make them, be able to stay afloat, get over this, so they can continue to grow.
And Senator Gutierrez?
No, I mean, absolutely. The biggest thing right now is to protect, companies that are out there creating and generating jobs in this pandemic, and be able to help the ones that we lost because of the pandemic. And so we saw the restaurant industry in particular, and the hospitality industry, the hotel industry, has been devastated. Look at our city of San Antonio, number one tourist destination in the state. We've got to be able to help businesses that go out and employ the people that work in my district, in District 19. And so it's my hope that we'll be able to come up with incentives that make sense. And it's also my hope that we start looking at new revenue streams like cannabis, like 13 destination resort casinos. That'll generate. We talked about that in 2009 in my first session. Edmund Kemple was about to pass that bill in the House, but unfortunately Edmund had a heart attack that evening. And so we've got to be able to look at things that create new revenue without raising property taxes at home. Thank you.
And last but not least, Senator Blanco.
Yeah, look, thousands of Texans are out of work and facing food insecurity, the inability to pay their bills and mortgages and rent. Businesses are struggling to stay open. I think one thing that we really need to consider is passing Medicaid expansion in Texas. I think this could be one of the most effective tools to address health and economic impacts caused by COVID. It can be a mini stimulus package, whether you call it Medicaid expansion or the Texas plan or whatever you want to call it. But it's just really sitting on the table for us to use. And we really need to support our workers. We need to support our small business owners to help the economy bounce back stronger than what it was before. So we also need to look on how to improve access to healthcare by cutting, some of the regulations on primary caregivers and expanding telemedicine options for rural and border communities.
And another audience question from Dina, who asks, how will the public education gains made in House Bill 3 last session be protected? Senator Springer, I'll start with you.
You know, we had great news from the comptroller the other day and finding out we're just shy of $1 billion short, whereas I think just a month or two ago, we were thinking it was $4.6 billion. You know, I know that I did not pass or vote to pass HB 3 to only see it live for 2 years. And so, you know, we're committed to make sure that the things that we put in place will continue to work in HB 3. And we have numerous options to be able to do that. And so my commitment stands by those, the bill we passed with HB 3.
Mm-hmm. And Senator Blanco.
Yeah, I agree with Drew. I mean, House Bill 3 was just a great bipartisan bill, something that we can really be proud of. And we need to protect the investment in public education that we made last session. As Drew said, the budget for the next biennium is going to be a little less than our current budget. But frankly, the budget's a moral document, and I think that states our priorities. And I don't think we should cut any education or programs that families are going to rely on. There's ways to navigate the budget without cutting, these services in public education. Texas is going to get $5.5 billion in additional federal stimulus dollars that we could use for public education. And then we also have, billions of dollars in the rainy day fund that we can use. So I think it's important that we protect and build off what we did last session. And we have the opportunity to do that.
And last but not least, Senator Gutierrez.
Yeah, so the revenue estimate presupposes $50 a barrel oil, and so I do have some concerns about it. So far as HB 3 is concerned, there was two people that spoke on the bill. We both voted for it. It was myself and Trey Martinez Fisher in the House. And the real concerns, and this is pre-COVID, were not so much the problems that we're seeing now with COVID, was how to fund it into 2023 and beyond. And those are the prospective shortfalls that we're going to have, that we will be facing. And so regardless of what the revenue estimate suggests right now. And so I think that we're going to be fine in this biennium. It's the following biennium that we really have to look at sustainability of House Bill 3. And so I'll make the same promise and commitment as my colleagues have made. We all want to make sure that our kids in our schools have a greater accessibility to education and a good education. We can do better than we've done, quite frankly, but we've got to figure out how to create new revenue streams. Again, I've already talked about two of them. And that's really the only way that we're going to be able to enrich our ability to sustain House Bill 3 into the future.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we have about 5 minutes left. I want to ask each of you one last question before we sign off. So as we mentioned before, this will be a session with a tight budget, redistricting, COVID. There's a lot going on. So before the session really kicks off, I'm curious how each of you will measure a good versus a bad session for you and your constituents when everything is said and done. Senator Blanco, could I start with you on that question?
Sure. A successful session, I think, will be measured by what we were able to deliver for Texans. I think the questions we need to ask ourselves at the end of this session is, did we expand access to healthcare? Did we provide meaningful COVID relief for businesses and workers? Did we pass a budget that is balanced on the back of Texans who are already hurting? Did we help families and businesses get back on their feet? Did we help keep the promise on public education? Did we pass reforms, speaking specifically for El Paso, to keep our community safe from dangerous people getting guns? These are all challenges and challenging times, and people are looking to us for some leadership and for their government to have a plan to provide them with relief and a roadmap to recovery to help them, weather this pandemic. So I think those are the things that at the end of this session, those are the questions we need to ask ourselves, and I think the folks are going to hold us accountable for that.
I'll go to you next, Senator Gutierrez.
Yeah, I think that Cesar's points are well made. I mean, I think that when we talk about education, we have to talk about accessibility to education. I mean, we've all seen how our children are hurting now with, doing school from home and such. The technology divide has been exemplified during this last year. I know Drew's got a lot of rural. I've got a whole bunch of rural. Cesar's got some rural areas. They didn't have the same access to education as the kid in the inner city does. And so we've got to be able to, increase our technology. And speaking of the kid in the inner city, it's having them have the actual hardware, the computers, the iPads at home to be able to do school from home and such. And of course, parent care that unfortunately, when you've got two parents working, there's no one to be able to watch that child. And so we've seen some of the problems that COVID has created. We have to look at the future, not just of how we're going to deal with COVID, but how to be ready in the future when God forbid this ever happens again. Mm-hmm. And so the state of our economy, the state of our education, the state of our healthcare are three very big nonpartisan points. Mm-hmm. And did I mention cannabis? I'm kidding.
And last but not least, we'll go to Senator Springer.
Thanks. I think we measure this session as successful when we come back and we see that small businesses are growing, they're hiring individuals, that the economy is recovering, that we're doing those things, that we've represented our districts and the needs of our districts. And whether that's my fast growth areas with their school districts and their roads, making sure those are in place, because, we can't just ignore the fact that we are a growing state and we need roads. So, a decade ago, they may have not funded roads properly. We can't afford to do that again. But at the same time, as Roland said, I do have those rural aspects, and rural broadband is a big issue. And then knowing that all kids have the same access to a great education, irregardless of where they live. I think it's the electrification of the 21st century. And so when we look at all those, knowing that we did a budget that works for all Texans, that will stay conservative, we get to our redistricting, and we do what our founding fathers of Texas said, then we go back and live and make a living, raise our families with the same rules and laws that we passed. And that's really what makes Texas so special versus DC. And, that's why I think all three of us probably had chances to go somewhere else, but, there's no place like Texas. And I'm looking forward to making sure that it maintains and becomes that great state that it always is.
Perfect. And with that, we are out of time. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Senators Blanco, Gutierrez, and Springer for joining us. For more coverage from the Texas Tribune, please visit texastribune.org or sign up to get the latest news from the legislature in your inbox at trib.it/ledge. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.